Good morning. Here we are with Grief Inspired Live. And what you're listening to is Asia. I might be aging myself. Only Time Will Tell, which is so appropriate for Only Time Will Tell. So how's everybody today? My name's Catherine McNulty. If you don't know me, I hope you do, because if you don't, follow me on Facebook. What I do here is every Sunday morning I go live on my Facebook page, and I talk about all things relating to grief. I have a particularly soft spot for women who have lost babies, mothers who have lost children, because that is who I am. It is what I know. So I try to speak about what I know rather than what I don't. So I take all of this, and every week I upload it to my YouTube channel, which is my Grief Inspired YouTube channel. If you like what you see here, I want to encourage you to go there and to follow me, subscribe, and like what I've got going on over there. So today we're going to talk about infertility. And this is something, like I said, I don't talk about things that I don't know. I understand what it means to be struggling with infertility, and I want to talk about it. And I titled this Infertility When Everyone Else Seems to Be Pregnant, because that's what happens. And if you've ever struggled with infertility, or if you're struggling with infertility now, seemingly the moment you decide that you want to be pregnant and you start trying to have a family, everyone else around you tends to get pregnant. Your best friend, your neighbor, someone down the street, the people that you work with. The moment you decide that you want to have a baby, everyone else in the world seemingly already has babies. You start to see maybe duplicates or twins or triplets. You see them everywhere. And so we're going to talk about why that's the case, because there is actually a biological reason for that, or neurobiological reason that I want to just bring up, because for me, it helped me. So here's the thing. When we talk about infertility, there really isn't anything worse than being in your 40s, with your fertility lifetime looming, the ending of your fertility lifetime looming ahead of you, coming closely and desperately wanting to have a child and not being sure whether or not you're going to be able to have one. Not being sure whether or not you can get pregnant, not being sure whether you can stay pregnant. And this is the thing that is what infertility is all about. In a lot of cases, at least that's the way it was for me. So I want to spend time today talking about infertility and how that relates to grief and loss, because I am going to argue that infertility is very much, the struggle with infertility is very much creates a grief response. And we're going to talk about that. But before I do that, I want to take a moment and honor all of the women, and you know who you are out there, who have struggled to try to get pregnant, who have struggled with infertility. Some of you have gotten through it with a successful pregnancy. Some of you have not. Some of you have suffered miscarriages, stillbirths. You've been able to get pregnant again. Some of you can't. All of these things, the entire struggle with infertility it deserves basically a moment of silence. It deserves our attention, because sometimes we don't give it enough credit. And we don't acknowledge how all-encompassing it is in our lives, how it takes over everything, how it drives all of your decision-making, how it regulates your emotional status, your state of mind, your mental wherewithal, whether or not you can remember things. All of these things relate directly to the infertility journey. And I just want to say how unfair it is when you're in it, when you're deep in it, and you're struggling to get pregnant, and You want nothing more than to be pregnant and to have a baby, and you don't know if it's going to happen. And there's this fear and this panic that maybe it won't. And then there's a biological desperation to make it happen that only increases typically with most women as they age. So let me start here. So I want to start with the fact that we are biologically created. We are biologically driven. We are biologically designed to want to procreate and to have children. It's how our species survives. It's inherent in our DNA. And I know from personal experience, and let me know if you can attest to this, but as you get older, the drive and the desire and the need to procreate gets more intense. So for me, I was good. I was very focused on my career and not really hyper focused on, I thought I had more time than maybe I did, or yeah. So at 35 is when things started getting really serious. We used to joke in our 30s, like, oh, maybe we should freeze our eggs. Probably should have done that. So if you're in your 30s and you're wondering, if you're having the thought, should I freeze some eggs? My advice would be look into it and decide if it's right for you, because I probably should have. But anyways, I'm digressing. So the point I was making is that there's a biological urge as you get older to want to procreate. And for me, it got really intense at around 35. And then continued to go from there. And that's what drove me to want to, start having a baby. But for me, I needed to be married, right? I had the belief system that you can't have children without being married. And so I was like, shit, I have to find somebody to marry. I need to get married. And so I didn't get married until I was 38. And so I was really in a position to, once I hit 38, like I needed to hurry. And I felt a very strong sense of urgency to get pregnant. And, when you're ready, when you make the decision that now is the time, I want to get pregnant, I want to have a family, I want to be holding a baby, because that's what you think about, everything changes. And everything about your world gets hyper-focused on that. And if you try and you begin to do that because that's what your expectation is, and you fail, or you struggle to get pregnant, a perceived failure, you start to grieve. And that's where grief starts. And it gets really, really challenging. And that's what infertility is very much a lot like grief. Infertility, loss, and grief really do go hand in hand. So before we jump into that, so let me talk a little bit about, I mentioned that I was going to tell you why does it seem like when you want to get pregnant that everyone in the world around you, everyone seems to be pregnant? There is an absolute neurobiological reason for this. And so for me, when I learned that there was some neurobiology behind this as a scientist, I was like, okay, yes, like I can get my head around this. So let me explain this to you, and it'll make things more understandable. So we have in our mind what's called a reticulating activating center. So it's a portion of your brain. And the goal of that portion of your brain is to take all of the internal input that's coming in through your eyes and through your hearing and everything that's coming in, all of that sensory information that's coming in, and be able to select out what is relevant for you, right? There is so much information coming in at one time that if that were all coming into you, you wouldn't be able to function. So, hi, Deb. Good morning. Oh, thank you. So everyone's telling me they love the curly hair, so I'm just going with the curly hair. Because honestly, it's way easier. It's way easier and it gives me more time to like work on this kind of stuff. Anyways, so neurobiologically, our brains are able to take things out of what's coming into our brain so that we can function. When you become hyper-focused on something, for example, infertility or becoming pregnant, you begin to focus more on that. So your brain actually selects these types of things to bring into you. And so that's why you start seeing more people who are pregnant, right? So the number of people who are pregnant does not automatically increase once you want to get pregnant. That does not happen. It's always about the same amount. But what does happen is your focus on pregnancy and people who are pregnant and baby things and baby songs and baby toys and all of that really becomes heightened. And you know, another real world example of this is think about all the times where you've driven somewhere that you've gone multiple times, whether it's from your house to work, from your house to a store, where you know that path. Well, you can spend the entire time driving to that location and you can get there and you can look up and you can say to yourself, I don't even remember driving here. That is because you were not focused on that. It was all happening in your subconscious and your reticulating activating center was not showing that to you because it was all happening in the background. So that's why, I hope that makes sense. Let me know if that makes sense. But the idea is that because you are hyper-focused on getting pregnant, being pregnant, focusing on infertility, all of these things, they're coming up, they're showing because that's what your brain helps to do. And that can be painful at times. Especially when you're struggling to get pregnant and when you see everyone around you is pregnant. And I have another infertility video that's called Infertility Sucks that I did about 4 or 5 years ago on YouTube. So it's big and purple. The thumbnail is big and purple. You can find that too. And I remember on there, you know, I actually talked about all the emotions that go around being you know, struggling with infertility. And I remember, you know, thinking like I wanted to stab pregnant people because I wanted to be pregnant and I couldn't have that. And so I said that in a YouTube video, and whether I should have said that, I don't know. But like, that's what the experience was for me, is I was angry that I was not pregnant. I was angry that I was struggling with fertility. I was, you know, disappointed and hurt. So that's where, you know, it takes us into the experience of struggling to get pregnant and feelings of loss and feelings of grief. Because I will argue all day long that struggling with infertility the response is a grief response. And there's so many reasons why. So let's talk about this for a second. You know, it doesn't help that society expects us to just get pregnant. So you do your thing, you get married, you have a baby. And the second you get married, people start asking you, when are you going to have a baby? When are you going to have another baby? When are you going to, right? It's just inherent. Society does that. And if we can't do what we feel is normal, what we feel is expected, there's a grief response to that. And, you know, I looked up grief yet again, to see what the way it's defined lately. And it says grief is the response to loss, particularly the loss of someone or some living thing that has died, to which a bond or affection has formed. And I think that the point here as it relates to infertility is that there is a bond and affection that has formed. The moment that you decide to have a family, the moment that you decide you want to try to get pregnant, you're looking 20 years into the future. You're creating this emotional bond. You have expectations for your life. And if that's not coming to fruition, it's going to leave you feeling like you've lost something. And when you are feeling like you've lost something, the grief response kicks in. This is a natural thing. So when we talk about infertility, we can talk about, you know, you can have feelings, all the feelings and the emotions that go along with grief that I talk about in all of my other videos, they show up in infertility. guilt, denial, anger. Anybody angry? I had tons of anger being struggling with infertility. Why could everyone else get pregnant and I can't? Why is this hard so me? I felt guilty. Why is my body not working? What did I do? Why does God not think that I should have a child? What did I do wrong, right? There's all of these different things. Denial. Well, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Bargaining. Dear God, I promise that if you just give me a baby, I will do whatever you say, right? Anybody who struggled with infertility, if you believe in God, there's a bargaining there. That conversation is happening. I know it did for me. But the point is that the response the emotional response to struggling to get pregnant with infertility, it's emotional, it's mental, it's physical, and it's spiritual. It's all encompassing, and it becomes something that's, all you can think about all day long. And it's really overwhelming. And, further you can go and you can say, well, it's almost like there's an anticipatory grief, right? Which is anticipatory grief is thinking about something that's going to happen in the future, right? So if a loved one is going to die and you start grieving because that's inevitable, that they're going to pass on, that's anticipatory grief. As it relates to infertility, it's like, well, what if I can never get pregnant? What if I can never have a baby, right? The moment you start having those thoughts, that's anticipatory grief. That's how it's defined. And that's no joke. That's no joke. And I felt that way for so long. And then there's talking about more grief. Let's say, for example, you get pregnant and then you're not. Or you think you're pregnant because they call it a chemical pregnancy and then you're not. Or you're pregnant for 8 weeks and then you miscarry. All of these things, they're losses. They're losses that go hand in hand with infertility and struggling and trying to get pregnant, and they create grief. Now, the only thing, to the counter argument here as to whether or not infertility, invokes the grief response. The other one is, well, sometimes this type of grief can be temporary because, like in my situation, I was able to get pregnant. So after I had lost my son, Jackson, I was desperate to have another child because I was 40 and I didn't want, we had the decision, my husband and I had the decision, do we want to try again or do we just call it quits? And my husband was like, let's stop while we're ahead. Like we can be fine without having a baby. We can be our own family, and there's advantages to not having children, right? And we started listing out all the advantages. We can travel, we can buy a boat, we can do this, we can do that. But for me, there was this primal urge to be pregnant and to have a family and to have a baby of my own. I'm youngest of 7, and I had always assumed that I would have multiple children. I just assumed that was the case. I didn't have any reason to think that it wouldn't be. And so the only thing that's different about the grief and the loss of infertility is that sometimes you can get pregnant and sometimes you can have a baby. And so that grief that you were experiencing kind of ends, but you don't forget. Like I remember the feeling. And when I talk to other women who are struggling to get pregnant, who are desperate to get pregnant, or when I watch on Instagram all the women who are, posting day after day after day about how they're trying to get pregnant, it's real stuff. It's real stuff. And it's the same reason why we go through everything that we go through in terms of trying to get pregnant. I mean, we spend, thousands of dollars trying to get pregnant, giving ourselves hormones, paying attention to our ovulation cycles, giving ourselves hormone shots every day. I used to joke twice on Sunday and Thursdays. And we let it consume our entire lives, and we dedicate everything and we give everything emotionally and physically to try to have a baby. And thank God for the magnificence of science that can do amazing, amazing things to give people who struggle with infertility a chance at having a baby. And there are so many, I am sure, like I'd love that anybody that is either an IVF baby who watches this or who has known someone who is an IVF baby. I mean, I think we should put it here because we should acknowledge how pervasive this is. And it really, although we don't talk about it all the time, it happens a lot. And many of the people likely that you know are really wonders of science that they've been created, thank goodness, because of all the things that infertility treatments can do, right? So shout out there to all the scientists and all the doctors and all the pharmaceutical companies and everybody who's trying to work to find ways to create families, to give mothers who are desperate to have a child, who are biologically driven to want to have children, a chance to have a family. And when you're the one who's stuck wanting to be pregnant, wanting to hold the baby, I mean, I can remember this so intensely and wondering whether or not it was ever going to happen for me. And it brings tears to my eyes literally today, because there's something that, if you haven't ever struggled with infertility, if you happen to be one of the people who's watching this who hasn't ever struggled with infertility, wow. It is all encompassing and it is no joke. And it can take over who you are as a person. So I hope that I've made an argument to let you know that if you're struggling with infertility, or you know someone who's struggling with infertility, that they are very much in a grief response, that they are likely experiencing grief, and that may go on for a period of time. It may end, or they may choose to end trying to get pregnant. So we need to be careful about saying, when are you going to have another baby? Because you just don't know. Maybe those people are trying, and maybe they're going through their infertility struggle and their infertility journey silently. Not everybody shouts it from the rooftops like I'm doing. Fertile at 50 on Instagram. You can find me there. I'm not really telling people that publicly, but I guess I am now. So I'm going again. I'm going to be 50 this year, but biologically my body is 40, according to my fertility doctor. And I'm trying. And so I'm back in the infertility cycle, in the infertility world. And it's so important to me, because it's so meaningful. We want to have children. We love our children. They're supposed to be with us. We're supposed to have them, and we want to keep them and hold them and hug them and love them. And every woman, in my opinion, deserves to be a mother. If you want to be a mother, you deserve to be a mother. And thank God that science is catching up and it's helping with any of the problems, to help with fertility. And there's other avenues that people choose, whether it be adoption or fostering kids or just being in a space with kids where you can be a mother to other kids or act in a motherly role, to nieces and nephews, to other kids, whatever that is. it's a gift. It's a gift and it's a struggle. And, you know, I was talking to a friend this morning, helping her through some of her life challenges. And, you know, I was talking to her and I said, you know, she was thanking me. And I said, you know, but here's the thing. This is where life lives, right? This is where the memories are made. This is where the importance is. This is where the meaning is. This is why we do everything that we do. And when there's things that are meaningful, sometimes they cause us pain. And so what I try to do with Grief Inspired is honor that pain, honor the struggle, acknowledge that it's real, and help you get through it, so that you can be reminded that you're not alone on this journey. And as lonely as it feels, there are other people who know what you're going through. And I want to encourage you to find those people and connect with them, because through all of my grief journey and through all my infertility struggles and through all of these almost 50 years of my life, the one thing that I've learned is that we cannot do it alone. We cannot be islands. We need to connect, and we need other people. And that's where the beauty in life lives. And I think that's why we're here, is to live, to connect, and to try to understand each other a little bit better. So thank you so much for watching today. Like I said, this will be posted on YouTube. Please consider going there. Make sure you subscribe to my Grief Inspired YouTube channel, and you can find a lot more information on infertility, on grief, on loss, and the things that mean the most to us. So thank you so much for watching, and we will talk to you soon. Bye.